Today we're talking about a new idea from the Biden administration. His idea is to shut down the credit bureaus and transfer all the power to the CFPB, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The reason why I feel this is important is twofold. One, it gives us a good carrot, essentially allowing for debt forgiveness. And number two, it sets us up for having a social credit score just like we have in China. I'm going to go over both details, the carrot and the stick. All right, let's start with the carrot. I'm going to read you a little bit from a news article on Yahoo Finance. Biden wants to shut down credit bureaus. And here's a little quote from the new director, Dave Uehio, who was just appointed by Biden. They have two priorities. Priority number one is relief for consumers facing hardship due to COVID-19 and the related economic crisis. And priority number two, racial equity. What that means is they want to ban credit reporting from private companies and bring it in-house to the credit reporting agency, the CFPB. What I suspect will happen is we're going to have effectively debt forgiveness for the people who were affected the most by this crisis, the ones that didn't have any fault of their own. That means small business owners who lost their businesses or who are deeply in debt, households who were impacted financially and are behind on their rent, mortgages, utilities, and just regular bills. And it will not help the people who were prudent and had savings and were able to keep up with their bills regardless of the situation. Let me explain why that is. Basically, right now, if you're late on rent, if you have a mortgage forbearance, if you're late on your bills, none of this gets reported to the credit bureaus. If you have mortgage forbearance, there is a little reporting explaining that you have somehow modified your mortgage payments. But that's about it. However, once all the restrictions go away, the rent moratorium, the unemployment assistance, the mortgage forbearance, the allowance of utilities not to shut off your service even though you're a few months behind, we're going to see a wave, basically a tsunami of bad credit scores. Bad credit scores are really bad for the economy in a few ways. Number one, it means you have a lot of people who can't keep up and pay their bills. Number two, those people for years to come are not going to be able to get loans with favorable terms, meaning credit cards or personal loans. They're not going to be able to buy new cars or used cars on decent terms or at all. They're not going to be able to buy new houses. Even if they have a house right now that sells, they will still have that forbearance mark on their credit score, making their financing of a new house more expensive than for someone else. And number three, we're going to have people who can't move into new apartments, move to another city, move to another state because of their credit score. And on top of that, more and more employers are asking to see how the credit score is of a potential employee. And if you have a bad credit score, they don't want to hire you. So if they take credit scores and move them to a government agency, then they have the power to decide how to report all those events. They can say whatever happened between March 2020 and March 2021 doesn't count, regardless if you owe thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, or millions of dollars. They can also say we're changing the formula, so your credit score is going to be formulated in a different way, and we're starting now, meaning whatever happened in the past is not going to be important. So essentially, you get a great reset, if you will, on your debt and your credit score. But the most important thing is that the government and the banks, even though banks are officially private, they're highly dependent between government, Federal Reserve, and banks. There is a high dependency. So the government can tell banks, just use a credit score. Don't worry about what happened before. Banks want to be able to make credits and have a legal justification for it. So they want to be able to lend money to somebody who has a good credit score. The government wants people to be able to borrow so the economy can keep growing. And the Federal Reserve has that incentive as well because they want dollars to be moving. So essentially, nobody has an incentive to have bad credit scores. Now, if you keep the current system, those are private companies that really can't make that call on their own. However, if you move that reporting to a government agency, the government can do whatever it wants. So they can say, we're not going to have, we have brand new credit scores, or we have credit scores that don't count 2020, and life goes on. People can buy houses, people can buy cars. It's like nothing happened. My suspicion is what they're trying to do, and why this article and very few articles like that came out, but it didn't get picked up by the mainstream media, is because this is just planting the seeds. What Biden wants to do, remove the credit bureaus. They're going to wait for the tsunami of bad credit scores. They're going to create a background environment where small business owners are upset because their businesses got shut down and their businesses failed. Homeowners and renters will get screwed because the government told their employers you're not allowed to work anymore. But it will create a background noise where credit agencies will be placated as the bad actors. Now, are credit agencies bad actors? Definitely. They are one of the major reasons why we have the 2008 financial crisis. They sold mortgage-backed securities, or they rated mortgage-backed securities as AAA, even though they fully knew they were not AAA. But because credit agencies get paid by the person ordering the report and the rating, they had all incentives in the world to rate them as AAA. So we're going to have a little mix of media explaining how credit agencies are ruining people's life, not taking into consideration the pandemic. We're going to have more media coverage explaining how credit agencies were the ones responsible for the 2008 financial crisis. And then we're going to have Biden, our new savior, banning the credit agencies, taking over their credit reporting and moving it to a government agency, and forcing the banks to use the new government agency. So, in effect, if you owe a whole bunch of money right now, you have no incentive of paying it off because it won't go on your credit score. And the only way whoever you owe the money to is able to get it is if they sue you, get a judgment, which means a lot of expenses for lawyers and court fees and a lot of time. And then they have to be hoping that you have the money for them to get paid. Now, we have a very good example of what happens when credit scores are run by a government. And that's China as an example. And what they did is they have social credit score. A social credit score is not only what your credit worthiness is, but it also is what is your behavior like. So do you say bad things about the Communist Party? Do you say bad things about the Chinese economy? Do you say good things about the United States? And I fully suspect the same thing will happen here in the United States. Now, it's not going to happen in a couple of years. I'm 99% sure they're going to wait for the next crisis to implement the social credit score. How that will look like is on the next crisis, when it happens, you're again going to have protests, you're going to have riots, people being unhappy with the way things are. We would have had the government running your credit score for, let's say, at least 3-4 years. When you have the government running your credit score, and at the same time you're complaining how bad the government is, how it's taken away your human rights, your constitutional protections, the government has really no incentive to keep your credit score high. So if you say that the government is unconstitutional, your credit score goes down. Your credit worthiness depends on your behavior outside of the financial system, just in your social circle. And the credit score is very important for a lot of people to get a good job. It requires a credit score. To get good rates on mortgage, it requires a good credit score. So it incentivizes people to keep their mouth shut, not complain in public or even in private. They would know what to say and when and what not to say to make sure the credit score stays up. I want to give you a little picture here of what the Great Reset is as far as in reality, the Great Reset was proposed in the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is basically where all the elites go and decide what our future will be according to them. Top-down economics, essentially. So if you look here, we have a little diagram that officially the diagram from the World Economic Forum of what the Great Reset will look like. And we have a whole bunch of sectors with a whole bunch of subsectors, but I wanted to zoom in on this. We have inclusive design, we have peace and resilience, we have human rights, we have systemic racism, we have justice and law. So basically what it says is redesigning social contract, skills and jobs. The first saying is redesigning social contracts. Your social contract is how do you behave? It's simple as that. That's what a social contract. Can you say Biden is a jerk? If you can't say it, that's part of your social contract. And if you can get punished for it, then it becomes part of the justice and law system. But if it's just something people want to prove, people will think of you as a lunatic or inappropriate. That's just part of your social contract. And that's what they're going to do. If your social contract is redesigned to where criticizing the government, criticizing government policy, criticizing government overreach, stepping over human rights, stepping over the Constitution, if this becomes part of the social contract that is bad for you, directly financially bad for you, well, then you have direct behavior modification. Direct behavior modification means is you decide to go against the system, that's fine. We're going to make sure that your creditworthiness is not good, can't buy a house, can't get the job you want. However, if you're a good boy, if you're a good citizen, and you don't do any of those things, well, then your credit score is going to go up. You didn't pay your rent for a year in 2020? No big deal. Just be a good boy. We got you covered. So my idea is that this Great Reset that we're looking at, that diagram, it's showing what the game plan is. It's showing what they want to change the world to. And there's a lot of subsections to it. This is one of them. But basically, redesigning the social contract is behavior modification. So anything that you think of today as normal, 15 years from now might not be normal. 15 years from now, criticizing the government might be people trying to shy away from you because it might get them in trouble just for being around. And if you think this is a stretch, it's not. I've lived in a communist country. That's how it happened there. If you wanted a certain job, you have to be a member of the Communist Party. And if you wanted everything to be normal, you were to keep your mouth shut. Same thing is in China. You criticize the government or government policies, that's not good. But the main difference, the biggest conclusion is, the carrot is essentially you're going to have debt forgiveness for the stuff that happened in 2020, between March 2020 and March 2021. At the same time, the stick is coming when the next crisis comes, when the rioting starts, when protests start, and people start saying how bad the government is because we're in the next crisis, whatever it would cause it, I don't know yet, but something's going to cause the next crisis. And when people start criticizing, the credit scores are going to start dropping, and that's the stick. I hope this was useful to you. My name is Nasko. I'm from the Great Reset. Over the next few months, I'm going to go every one of those subsections here in that Great Reset wheel that you're seeing. That's the main reason I started this channel. If you like my videos, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share, do all those things because it really helps. Thank you very much. Have a great night.